All right, this one I'm excited to do because I made this game in college. I never finished it because it was way too ambitious. Um, you'll see why in a second. Especially for like 2004 OpenGL technology. Like what I was trying to do was just too hard for one person to do. I was basically trying to make like a PlayStation 1 action RPG. It was inspired by Parasite Eve and Final Fantasy VIII. I'll tell you a little bit more about the game after we play through it. Also, the music in this is not mine. I used to use this website called Mod Archive and just kind of sub in tunes for like during game development phase. And then, of course, my game development phase never ended in the case of this game. So, really happy about this one because back in the day I never really captured good footage. 20 years ago, Linux screen recording was garbage. So I'm really stoked to finally get some footage of this whole game, at least all the parts of it that I did. So I'm going to play through it and then I'll do some commentary a little bit afterwards. I actually did do all the 3D modeling for these models back in the day and the animation by hand. I remember busting my ass to get it to even look like this good. Final Fantasy VII was kind of the vibe I was going for, maybe more like Final Fantasy VIII. And I did all the pre-rendered backgrounds from scratch in Blender. That's the main reason why I never finished or even got started making this game. It just took me months of work to get like 5 minutes of gameplay. As you'll soon see, most of the game is scripted too. I invented my own scripting language for the game and wrote my own parser for it. This is way back before JavaScript or anything was a thing. So a lot of this stuff is driven by scripts. Andy, the main character, is a cop. His backstory is that he's a cop. So I got the debug keys enabled so I can check the collision detection. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I did the pre-rendered backgrounds after I get through the content of the game. All right, here comes the fun part. let's go. All right, this is the battle engine. You gotta press shift to raise your guard. This is like really hard jank controls and space to punch. And then they reload the gun. He's dead. And that's everything. Well, more or less. I'll show you some of the other content I never got through. The idea with that fitness bar was going to be that you were actually going to have to work out to gain levels. Like, you were going to have to go to your apartment or the gym and, like, actually lift. You wouldn't just get free levels, which at the time I thought was a pretty novel idea. So this is, like, the scripting engine. So if I want to, like, load in other content, all I have to do is change this and rerun the game. I actually got this game compiling, which took a little bit of work on Linux because this is using, like, ancient technology. So, like, I have this scene going. I got... this isn't canon, but, like, you know, I basically have some, like, testing of the system for when you talk to people. If I hit B, it'll go into battle. So it'll actually run the battle engine again. And then I have the hospital hallway scene, and then these dumbass headless enemies that, like, are really dumb and they barely, like, do anything to you. And then I have this key for, I think, okay, kills them. And then I have, like, a game over screen I can run as well. Let me show you the hospital. You're basically looking at, like, half of college, like, all the work of half of college. So, like, at least a year and a half just for this little bit amount of the game. Like, that just goes to show you, like, just how much work it was back in the day to do this kind of stuff. Like, nowadays, it would be really cool to have, like, AI, maybe, like, use AI generative stuff, but even then, it wouldn't really, like, match the aesthetic. I wanted this to look like a retro, like, PlayStation 1 game. So I wanted the backgrounds to be pre-rendered and actually have the tank controls, like, that I was so nostalgic for, like, even in 2004. I actually would save the camera settings from Blender and then export them out so that when I loaded them into the scene, they were exactly the same as the OpenGL camera that I, like, overlay the 3D stuff onto. And then I would, like, have, like, overlays. Let me, like, open this. So I would have, like, scene overlays, like the hospital bed, so that you can walk behind it. Because back then I didn't know how to render depth. So I probably could have just rendered everything to, like, the depth buffer and done, like, like, Z buffering. But I wasn't that good at that kind of stuff back then, so I really kind of had to hack some things together. Let me check out some more of these scripts. I think, yeah. So this shows how I set up the collision detection. It's, like, super jank for the like, you know, the actual content, like when I was, like, walking around the hospital and whatnot. And also, I'm trying to remember where I put the camera in. It might have been in the actual script itself. So, like, if I look at HSC, yeah, camera position, camera orientation, and so forth. Anyway, yeah, so I have the camera settings, the player, and all that stuff. And I don't even know if this would line up with modern Blender at all anymore. One of the things I wanted to do while I'm recording, I haven't really dove into too much of this stuff yet. Obviously, I looked at, like, the icons and some of the textures. I want to look at, like, my equivalent of a game design doc, and I also want to look at the Blender files and see if they can still, like, load in, like, a 20-year later version of Blender. So I think I have a file in here called ideas. Yeah, I do. And this was so I used to use Linux. Like, I was actually using Linux back when I made this game. So, like, I would use OpenOffice back then to do stuff. So yeah, the idea with this game, this was kind of cool. I don't remember having this idea, but, like, basically the character gets a life bar extension for every boss he beats. This is way before Dark Souls, so this was kind of a cool idea back in the day. I was thinking this might be an old idea because originally I wanted to replace it with the idea, oh, that's right, he would work out to get stronger, not to gain levels. So, like, he would increase his attack by using those protein bars. And then, yeah, I had the idea of, like, getting different bullets that were like stronger, because most of the attack in this game is going to be based off of that gun mechanic, not really like punching. Um, the idea that I had was that, oh, I never told you like what the story was. The story is basically that your girlfriend gets into a car accident and then she gets taken to the hospital, and then basically the hospital gets fucking like Resident Evil style overran by zombies, like from the morgue, and you basically fight your way into the hospital and go up floor by floor all the way to get to the roof, or not the roof, but like the top floor where she's being held. And at some point you go down to the morgue as well. So I thought by having everything being like monotonous and like similar, that I'd be able to make the whole game by myself, because I was only doing the hospital. But I was so wrong. Like, just the amount of time it took back then. There was no turbo squid. I remember I spent like a whole week just modeling like the fucking wheel of a hospital bed, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't do this. And I was just a broke college student. I couldn't pay for like artists to make the content for me. Yeah, some of these things I actually implemented, as you can see. Yeah, I was gonna have like different type of fighting styles, even though like I was a really bad animator. Yeah, I had this character Jack, which was gonna be Andy's old like partner on the force, and you could visit like the precinct station and like go talk to him. There was gonna be a whole vibe about that. I was gonna have like a park, so you can go to the park to like train. That was gonna be like the way you grind to level up, because you wouldn't be able to like really grind the dungeon / hospital. Yeah, I had some like charts about how I was gonna like, scale the bullet damage and stuff like that. The items, I really was into this. Like, this game was gonna be like my magnum opus for back when everybody was making indie games in like the early 2010s, late 2000s. Like, I definitely had planned to like dedicate my whole life to this game, but it just never happened. So that's why I was so happy to like record it and get some content. So I'm going to take a look at some of the scenes in Blender and see if they still open. I don't think they do. I've opened the hospital one a couple times before. Let's look at the... I guess I didn't have that much. I know I had one... At one point I had like a stairway. But I don't think that's in this backup, because I don't see it. So... I guess I can just open the hospital up. Let's see. There it goes. Wow, that's crazy. So I have all the collision here still. These were like on a separate layer, and I would actually have to export these cubes. I even think I used like a Python thing to export it. I don't know how to turn off layers anymore in modern Blender, so I'm just going to delete these. But these were like the collision cubes. And if I ask it to render, you can kind of see it looks like shit now. But like, yeah, the vibe I was going for back then. Let me see if I can open up a different one. Kind of sad that at one point I know I had the actual hospital and like stairway. Like, I was actually working on like the inside of the hospital, like in one of the floors. I just don't see it anymore for some reason. Open up the freeway. Oh yeah, all the lights. Doesn't render properly anymore. I think it's because I was rendering a cube map. This was like the highway, like seeing that you were in. So, yeah, it was pretty wild stuff. The actual game itself is running on top of a super old version of Allegro, which was a game library, and then I was using Allegro GL to like use Allegro-like things and call like super old school OpenGL stuff, like basically pre-shader OpenGL, like 1.2, 1.3. Which is pretty nuts. I really didn't know what I was doing that much back then with OpenGL, and my coding style was very much back then like C inside of C++. So I was like pointers everywhere, almost no like real good abstractions. Like, this is back before I'd ever really done programming professionally before. So it's pretty wild to like look at some of the algorithms for how I like drew the windows and stuff like that. And I'm like mixing and matching like this Allegro GL stuff with like OpenGL itself. The end result of the game, I'm actually like proud of how like pretty it looks for that like nostalgic vibe, considering how ugly the code is and like how ridiculous some of the like the methodology is for like what I was doing. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of walk you guys through this because I was really kind of stoked on it, kind of nostalgic now that I got it building again. And I just want to have some footage of it running. So pretty happy with it. But that was my game, Hospital. and I will never finish it, but that's okay.